Welcome, everybody. I'm Scott Patton. I'm president of free-ebooks.net, and we're so excited to have you join us. Our goal at free-ebooks.net is to support authors. It's incredibly difficult for authors to get publishing deals, to get out into the bookstores, and one of the reasons is they have to do marketing. But most authors, what do they love doing? They love writing. So I'm so excited for today because I'm going to be bringing on a gentleman that I have known, an entrepreneur that I have known for well over 10 years. And the whole time I've known him, I've been incredibly impressed by his super intelligence, the way that he's able to look at marketing and find out ways of doing things that I never ever think of. But he also comes with a warm, loving heart. And that's a real unique combination in today's world. So you're going to be getting some amazing training and some amazing opportunities to be able to take your book to the next level. So had known him for a long time. We've been bouncing ideas off each other forever. And I've even been featured in his 7th book that was on the shelves at it's Marketing Domination. It's awesome. And I have to tell you that was an incredibly pleasant experience. It was painless. And that's a lot of what he does with everybody that he works with. He makes it so it's an enjoyable experience, it's painless, and it's incredibly effective. So we got together a couple weeks ago on our live stream on Thursdays, and he was just very generous with his time and with his knowledge. And I asked him if we could do something more, and he graciously agreed to come on and do this webinar. So Seth Green is a direct response author and he's a direct response marketing marketing expert. He's also an incredible author, and he's a bestseller. He's been interviewed on NBC, CBS, Inc., and Forbes. And not only that, and I'm incredibly jealous about this because I've been podcasting since 2005. He is one of the co-hosts of Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin from the Shark Tank. And to make me even more envious, they were named the top 6 podcasts to listen to in 2019 by NASDAQ. So it's an amazing podcast. So make sure that you check it out as well. He's the only 3-time Marketer of the Year award nominee in history. And most importantly, and this is why I wanted to share him with you, his books have generated over $5.5 million in revenue. So Seth, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super stoked for all of our free-ebooks members to learn what you're about to share.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. It is an honor to be here. I am super excited to be here. Does everybody, you should have gotten when you registered a Dropbox link to this PDF of the 4 steps to becoming a profitable author, and you were instructed to print it out because we're going to fill it in right now. So hopefully you've got that. I am now going to share my iPad. And I'm going to fill it out with you. So,
cool.
Can you now see my drawing, my blank screen?
I can.
Awesome. Okay, here we go. So, you should have your first sheet should look like, and if you don't have them, you can draw along with me. There should be a triangle with 4 boxes around it. There should be a box in it with an arrow in these 3 sections. So the very first thing we're going to write in is on the bottom left of that triangle, we're gonna put the letter I for idea. Because some point you had an idea for a book, whether it was fiction or nonfiction, whether you wanted to tell your story, whether you wanted to tell a story, whether you wanted to get a message out there, you had an idea for a book. Now, you are not alone. Tens of millions of people every year have an idea for a book. But you took one step further. You did something. You actually wrote it. The W is for writing. You actually wrote the book, which should give you a whole lot. That's a smiley face or a P for pride. You should be very proud of yourself because you actually wrote a book. You didn't just have an idea. I heard my dad talk for decades about he was going to write the great American novel one day. And every once in a while, I'll say, he mentions it again every time I have another book come out. And he'll say, oh, yeah, I got to get around to writing that book. I'm like, Dad, how's that going? Have you written a page? No, he has not. So congratulations, you actually wrote a book. So you should be very proud of yourself. The idea, you wrote it, but then it goes to profits. Because the goal isn't just to get it doesn't matter how good a book you have if nobody ever reads it or if it never makes you any money, which is why I'm here to share with you today the 4 steps to becoming a profitable author. So in the very first box on the top right, you're going to write in the letter C. And I'm not a visual artist, as you can obviously tell. The bottom right box is an A. The bottom left box is an S. And the top left box is an H. What does C-A-S-H spell? Cash. Because in American society, so you got a book, you have a message out there. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your viewpoint, the measurement of how many people your message has affected is in the cash that you have received for sharing the message. Now, Scott mentioned that I've received over $5.5 million from the 8 books I wrote. And I'm going to share with you how I did that without becoming a New York Times bestseller, without becoming a Wall Street Journal bestseller, without I did not sell 500,000 copies to make $5 million. I sold a lot fewer. And I'm going to share with you what those 4 steps, the C, the A, the S, and the H are. So let's go on to page number 2. Page number 2, I'm going to draw it again in case you don't have it. There should be a box with an arrow pointing to a box, and then a little box underneath it. There should be another arrow with another box, and finally an arrow pointing down with a bigger box. Now, what does that C in cash stand for? The C stands for credibility. I can't fit credibility in my box in any way that it would be legible for you, but I made your boxes bigger so that on your handout, so that you could write credibility into your box. So the C stands for credibility. Now, if we follow the arrow over, I'm writing the words how many with a question mark. How many books does the average book sell, a physical book in a bookstore sold by a major publisher like Wiley & Sons or Simon & Schuster? How many copies do you think the average book sells in its lifetime? Please type in the chat box for me. How many copies do you think the average book sells over its lifetime? Scott says 500, Leonie says 500, Monique says 3,000. Monique is right. It's 3,000 books. Now, here's the crazy part. I'm going to write underneath the word ebooks. How many ebooks were sold last year? Because at freeebooks.net, Scott isn't shipping physical copies of your book. It's ebooks. So how many ebooks were sold last year, not counting freeebooks.net? 22,308,000. 22,308,000. That's a whole heck of a lot of ebooks. So that segues into the next box in our question, how the heck are you going to stand out? How are you going to get people to find your ebook or your physical book if you also have one? How are you going to get them to buy it? And more importantly, how are you going to get them to consume more content from you that they're willing to pay more for? And I'll share with you how you can do that in just a minute. So how do you get credibility? How do you stand out from the 22 million other ebooks that are sold? How do you get past that the average book by a major publisher only sells a couple thousand copies in its entire lifetime? Well, what we kind of have noticed over the last, I've been in this business 13 years, And what we've noticed is you need a baseline level of credibility just to get you a seat at the table, just to get you to differentiate yourself just a little bit, just enough. And what is that? That's an Amazon bestseller seal, where Amazon puts a stamp on the front of your book, if you can see me, and says bestseller. Now, you don't have to be the bestseller, #1 bestseller at the top of all of Amazon books to get an Amazon bestseller seal. We can talk a little bit later about Amazon's terms of service and what constitutes a bestseller, which is refreshingly lower than what you might think. You don't have to sell 10,000 copies to be a New York Times bestseller just to get a seat at the table. All you need is Amazon bestseller seal, and we do have a process by which that is a lot more attainable than you might think. So let's go into sheet number 2, which should also look like a box with an arrow to a big box and then a little box. Another arrow, big box, little box. Another arrow, big, little box, big box. If you're with me so far. So this is the A in cash. Number 1, the C was credibility. The A stands for attention. Attention. You have to stand out. You have to get people's attention. So if we go to the box on the right, the first principle to getting somebody's attention is determining whose attention do you want in the first place? Who is your ideal target market? Just because you have a book doesn't mean you want anybody who can read, because there are people who aren't interested in your genre, if it's fiction. There are people who aren't interested in your topic at all. There are people who can't afford your book unless it's free. So let's do a quick poll here. Is your book fiction or nonfiction? Please answer the poll for me. Okay. All right. We got some of the votes in. Okay. I'm going to end the polling. Okay. Looks like we're 50-50 split between fiction and nonfiction. Okay. So we're going to play a little bit of a role play here to add some more value. So Monique, you're nonfiction. I'll pick on you first if that's okay. Type in the chat box for me, Monique. What's your book about? And we'll wait for Monique. Okay, so Monique is spiritual and personal development. Awesome. So that narrows it down from everybody who can read a book to anybody who cares about spiritual personal development, but that's still an audience of millions and millions of people. Monique, your target market, in my expertise, needs to be even more narrow. So could it be spiritual and personal development specifically for women? I interviewed someone on my podcast yesterday who only coaches women. She only coaches women entrepreneurs. She wants to only coach women entrepreneurs who are chiropractors. So now she's narrowed down the audience of tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people down to a small audience of tens of thousands of female chiropractors who own their practice as opposed to working in one. So now she can craft a message specifically to resonate. Hang on a second. There we go. She could craft a message specifically to resonate with female chiropractic entrepreneurs. And the good thing is, it's a lot easier and more affordable to reach them and stand out from that for them than it is to try and reach every woman on the planet or every woman interested in spiritual and personal development. So 50% of the success or failure of your book is going to be based on who it's aimed towards. The more generic it is, the less likely it is to make you a profitable author. Unless, of course, you've written something so compelling that it's going to get to the New York Times bestseller list and word of mouth is going to spread and virality is going to take it over. But the odds of that happening are infinitesimally small. So I've got to focus on folks who want to get their message out to a specific target market that we can target affordably and profit from royally. So first we have to figure out who our target market is. And then the next box is we have to figure out where they hang out. We have to figure out where they hang out. So spiritual and personal development is so broad. Could we reach people who are fans of that on Facebook? Sure. Could we reach them on YouTube? Absolutely. Could we reach them on TV? You sure could, but it would cost a lot more and it'd be a lot more ineffective. So what we have to narrow down is where is the ideal place for you to reach them? If they're female chiropractic entrepreneurs, then that's going to be an easier market to reach because we can literally advertise in their trade journals. We can buy a sponsored email blast to the subscribers of Chiropractic Magazine who are also women who are also owners. The more we narrow that down, the more we can find the easiest way to reach them where they hang out, where we can get their attention. Does that make sense? Awesome. Okay. Now I'm going to skip down a box and say, in the old days, one of the ways of marketing your book was doing a tour, a book launch tour. So this is where you would fly city to city, funded by a major publisher, and you do interviews on TV and radio stations all over town. And you would go to every city, every major city that they could book you on, and you do book signing at Barnes and Noble, and this is before COVID, obviously, and all those other places to get you more exposure for your book. Now, if you don't have a major publisher that's funding that, and if you can't travel and do all of those things because of COVID anyway, that model was actually dying a little bit before COVID happened and temporarily killed it off. And it was happening because of something called podcasts. So as Scott mentioned, I am the co-host of the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank. Now, Kevin just had a new book come out called Mentor to Millions. Now, to help promote Kevin's book, we did a book tour, but he never left his house. We did a podcast book tour. We booked Kevin on over 200 podcasts. He did 200 interviews in the span of a couple weeks, all about the upcoming launch of his book. And just based on the people from the podcast who listened to those shows, who went to the special link website to register to pre-order the book in order to get their bonuses that came with the book, he already hit the New York Times bestseller list and already pre-sold over 10,000 copies. Strictly on the back of podcasts alone. Now, what if you don't have time to do 200 interviews? What if you don't have the resources to get yourself on 200 shows? The good news is you can actually appear on a lot more of them without leaving your house and without doing the work. You could pay to have an advertisement for your book, a 30-second commercial like you'd hear on the radio, placed on almost any podcast you want. So the good news is there's 400,000 podcasts with thousands being launched every day, and they're all aimed at different target markets. So for example, if I wrote a book for Elvis impersonators on how to be a better Elvis Presley impersonator, there's not a radio show that the Elvis impersonator market isn't big enough to support a radio show, because a radio show costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to have on traditional FM radio, even in one city. It's expensive. Are there podcasts devoted to Elvis? Absolutely. Because it costs next to nothing to have one. And it doesn't require a significant investment to support one. And all the Elvis folks can find it without a giant advertising budget. So could you do some research on iTunes and Google Play and Spotify and Stitcher and iHeartRadio and find a list of 20 or 30 of the most relevant podcasts to personal development or to whatever you wrote about and get your ad placed on those shows? You absolutely could. You don't have to build the audience. You don't have to host the show yourself. Both of the things you could do. But you can write a small check and get your ad on those shows. And I wouldn't do 20 or 30 at a time. Do one, test it, see how it works, see how much traffic you get, and then go from there and take the money you make and plow it into the next one until gradually it becomes self-perpetuating, an upward loop, and you end up with your ads everywhere to the right people. Now, you could do what Kevin did, which is be a guest on other podcasts. So the difference is an advertisement might get you 30 seconds of that listener's attention. But if you're the guest on the show and you get interviewed, you'll be on for maybe half an hour. So when Scott interviewed me on his show, we didn't just talk for 30 seconds. He didn't just play my 30-second clip. I was on there for 20, 30 minutes or an hour, which is a much longer commercial, and it cost me nothing. So being a guest can be free to get you in front of that show host's entire audience. Are you with me so far? Our nonfiction, our fiction folks, just for an example, I'm gonna pick on Leonie. What's your book about? And I will move on to the next drawing. So we got credibility. We got attention. The next page only has 2 arrows this time. We got credibility, we got attention, we need success. Leonie wrote a murder mystery. Ooh, I want to read a copy of that one. I love murder mysteries. Here's the crazy thing. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of podcasts devoted to murder mystery and true crime. I didn't know this until we represented a true crime author. I would have thought, why would I have a podcast about murders? Well, people get on and talk for half an hour to an hour about crime. I read tons of true crime books. It's an interesting genre, and I read another murder mystery. I'm reading The Plea right now, or a suspense thriller every week. My father-in-law and I trade back David Baldacci and John Grisham books all the time, like every week. I read faster than he does, but we trade them back and forth every week or two. There are podcasts devoted to discussing the characters and the plots of those books. I had no idea. So your success as a profitable author is not going to come from selling books. I apologize for having to tell you that, but I had this discussion with my wonderful wife, Rebecca. See, my wife, Rebecca, was named by Brand Ballot as one of the top 100 mommy bloggers in the country. And her book launched earlier this year. This is her book. It's called Whiny Palooza. It's about parenting our roller coaster life with our 3 crazy kids and our 3 fur babies. Now you'll notice she's got a bestseller seal on the cover because she was an Amazon bestseller. But here's the thing. She said, awesome, my book hit, I think it was number 1 or number 2 in a couple different categories on Amazon, and she was all excited. And then she said, this is great. When does the money start rolling in? And I laughed, and I said, I'm so sorry, honey. You're not going to make $1 million selling books. You're not going to make $100,000 selling books. Because even if Amazon gave us 70% of the royalties, and you make maybe $10 a book, you're not going to sell 10,000 copies to make $100,000. 10,000 copies will get you on Amazon, on the New York Times bestseller list. And she said, well, how am I supposed to make money if I'm not going to make money selling a ton of books? I said, well, we're going to build what's called a marketing funnel, whinypaloozabook.com, where people register to get a copy of the book. They buy a copy direct from us, not from Amazon. And instead, right after they enter their credit card, there is what we call an upsell. You all know what an upsell is because you've all been to McDonald's where you say, I want a cheeseburger, and they say, would you like fries with that? Or you say, I want a number 3 Impossible meal, Impossible Burger, Whopper at Burger King. And what do they say? Would you like to supersize that? That's an upsell. It's an immediate ask right after you buy something to see if you'd like to buy more or something complimentary. So what comes next after your book? So my wife's a social worker and a counselor and a therapist. So what I thought she should offer after they bought the book was a consultation. Hey, if you want to talk about your marriage, if you want to talk about parenting, which are her 2 areas of expertise, register, get on my calendar, 100% money back guarantee. If you're not, I'll give you a discount on the first session. If you're not, punching your credit card. If you're not happy at the end of it, I'll give you your money back. So now instead of a $10 book sale, she's got a $197 session sale. And then at the end of the session, if they like it, she sells them a package where they get X number of sessions a month. So now all of a sudden, instead of a $10 book sale and then a $200 consultation sale, maybe now she's got a $1,000 a month client. Now, when I told her she could have somebody pay her $500, $1,000, $2,000 a month, she said, that's crazy. She said, when I was a social worker working at Catholic Charities, I don't think I made $2,000 a month. You're telling me one client's going to pay that? I said, well, the reason you didn't make that much is Catholic Charities is a charity, and the families that you work with were mandated by the court system that they had to work for you, and they were funded by a charity. So you got paid charitable wages. I said, if your target market was moms who are entrepreneurs who owned a business, a certain type of business, who are making a certain amount of money, and you're not selling them therapy, which they think should be $50 an hour, if you're selling them coaching, well, they're used to having coaches on their business. They perceive coaches as a higher level than therapists, and they're used to paying higher prices. And you've got the street cred that some of those coaches don't have. So yes, you could easily get one client to pay you $2,000 a month. And the good news, folks, is she's now making more money, a lot more money than she ever made as a licensed clinical social worker off the back of her book and her blog. So what comes after your book? We're going to do another quick poll. Please answer the question. It's multiple choice. How many copies of your book have you sold? Under 100, 100 to 500, 500 to 1,000, or over 1,000? Free giveaways count. Okay, waiting for a few more votes to come in. All right, looks like under 100 for everybody. So we've got some work to do. Now, you could theoretically build a very profitable business off of 100 books if you just sold them to the right people and you had a back end, a series of upsells that were very, very profitable. So this was my very, very first book, Financial Advisor Marketing Magic. It was designed specifically for financial advisors because that's how I started as a financial advisor. And it was designed to teach them marketing techniques that would get them new clients for their practices. Now, this is the current cover of the book. When the first cover came out, when the first book came out, I had literally had a high school intern do my book cover. And honestly, it was awful. It was a collection of it was terrible. And it had 28 pages of typos. You know why I know it had 28 pages of typos? Because my mother called me. She's a retired school librarian, an English major. And when my book came out 13 years ago, she bought it on Amazon. I said, Mom, I would have given you a copy. No, I wanted to be a real customer. I wanted to support you. I'm like, that's so sweet, Mom. You're not my target market. You're a retired librarian, and this is for financial advisors. I wanted to read your book. And she called me and said, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed for you. I'm like, why? She's like, she had it highlighted. She's like, I found 28 pages of typos in your book. This is terrible. How could you put this out? Why didn't you hire me to edit it? I would have looked at it. Did you even spell check the thing? This is before I had a publishing company and a staff of 36 to do all that work for me and for you. And I said, Mom, here's the crazy thing. You're the only one who cared. Not a single person who bought that book emailed me, called me, or wrote a negative Amazon review because of the typos. We've since re-edited it and republished it with a different cover, and we fixed all the typos. But here's the crazy thing. The first edition of that book that sold 76 copies generated over my first $100,000 in revenue. Because what happened is the book was structured in such a way, the financial advisors learned some awesome marketing, but then it drove them to do a consultation with us, an analysis of their practice, where they would learn what they were doing wrong and what they could improve and how they could hire us to do it for them. And that marketing service that we sold them as the solution to their problems generated over $100,000 of revenue in the first 90 days my book was out. We've since done that 8 other times. to a much larger degree of success, which is where the 5.5 million has come from, because we've gotten smarter every time we've done it. So if Monique is a spiritual and personal development coach, could the book lead to a course? Could the book lead to a consultation? Could the book lead to something else where they consumed more content from her, perhaps even paid for it, 97, 197, whatever it is? They go through Monique's process. They see her magic a little bit, not a lot, just enough to go, oh my God, that's amazing, I want more. And they write her a check. I had this happen with one of my spiritual coaches. Scott will tell you, I am a coaching junkie. I am in multiple mastermind groups. I have multiple coaches for multiple topics. And the most recent spiritual coach I worked with, I read his book. I did a consultation, a session. I felt so amazing at the end of that session, and like the weight of the world that was weighing on me at the time had been lifted from my shoulders, that I literally said, oh my God, I've never felt that much clarity. I've never felt that much stress relief. I've never felt like that. Like I feel like I'm buzzing. That was absolutely incredible. How do I get more of that? That it wasn't my only issue. I've got other issues. And then he explained to me how his program worked. And I paid $12,000 for 12 sessions, $1,000 an hour. It is worth every penny. He currently charges twice that. He's now charging $25,000 for 12 sessions, doing it all via Zoom. So you can do this in spiritual and personal development. Murder mystery. Could you do it as a murder mystery? You bet you could. You have to be a little bit more creative if it's fiction. But for example, we had one client who wrote a novel, a coming of age story about a high school age boy. His father's a motivational speaker. His father's demanding, overbearing perfectionist. They had just moved to a new neighborhood. The teenage son is getting bullied. He's misunderstood. He hates everything. He's unhappy. And the novels are really, I chose to publish it for a publishing company and market it because of what I wanted to come after it. And I said, is the book autobiographical? Did you have an over-demanding father? No, I didn't. Were you bullied? No, I wasn't. None of the things in the book happened to him. It was all made totally fiction. None of it was inspired by his own life. And I said, well, we need something on the back of this book if you're going to make any real money. The book's about bullying. A lot of it is about bullying. I said, could we write a nonfiction book about bullying and use that to launch your speaking career in front of school assemblies as a bullying expert? Well, I don't know anything about bullying. I'm not an expert. I said, well, could we get you podcast interviews where you interviewed 15 of the top bullying experts in the country? And the book's about what you learned. Sure, I could do that. So that book became an Amazon bestseller. And then we used that book to position him as an anti-bullying expert. And we wrote him a PowerPoint presentation teaching kids this anti-bullying process. We took the methods of all 15 of these experts, distilled it down, took the best parts, made up his own version with some other stuff that we got, interviewing bullying victims and bullies. And we made him an expert in the bullying space. And then, so he would get paid to speak in front of school assemblies. They would buy copies of the book. There was a workbook. They would buy a multi-day program. Either he would speak for the 90 minutes, or they would buy an all-day package where he then went into each classroom and worked with him. There would be workbooks. There would be follow-up. There ended up being t-shirts and swag and facilitations of him coming back a couple months later and measuring how many bullying incidents were reported, and so we could track how it worked. And it built a significant business on the back of a novel about bullying. So, do you see how that could work? Do you see how, if you think outside the box, if we think creatively, you can build a business on the back of a nonfiction book is easier, but you can do it on a novel. You just have to be more creative. So we've got C for credibility, A for attention, S for success, and now we've got H. So on the next page, oh, that's a lousy box. Hang on, I could draw a better box than that, I swear. There's a better box. H. 3 arrows, 3 boxes. You see, I keep repeating the same image, and maybe it'll get better as I practice. Monique says definitely, I could see how that would work. Awesome. Credibility, attention, success. H stands for house list. What do I mean by a house list? Well, here's the thing. Whether you sell 100 copies, 10,000 copies, 100,000 copies on Amazon, none of those customers belong to you. Amazon won't tell you who they are, which is why for Kevin's book launch, we built a separate website, Kevin Mentor. And each podcast he was on had a page, so he could send them kevinmentor.com/shark, kevinmentor.com/Grant Cardone, kevinmentor.com/Joe Rogan. So we could track how many book sales and what comes after it were sold to each podcast, so we could track his money. Now, the book was sold on Amazon, but the trick is if you offer them a bonus, and it doesn't cost you anything to deliver, and you say, email me your receipt from Amazon to this email address, and we'll automatically send you this bonus. It could be the missing chapter. It could be a PDF Adobe Acrobat file. It could be a recording of an interview you did. It could be the audiobook of you reading the book. It doesn't matter. But something to entice them, because we have what we call a receipt scraper technology, where every time they send an email to this specific email address that you set up, it automatically sucks all of the information out of their Amazon receipt. So you get their name, their email, their phone number, their snail mail home address, and their credit card information. So they email a specific email address, which automatically scrapes the information and then sends them an email back with the bonus. So you don't have to do any work to deliver it. And now they're in your database, and you can drip on them and continue to market to them until the end of time. Because Amazon won't tell you who they are. But Kevin now has a list of over 10,000 people who bought his book, who then are driven to the next page on his website, or what we call a marketing funnel. They're offered the, hey, do you want the audiobook? Hey, do you want to buy copies in bulk? Do you want to buy more than one copy to give away? And you get a discount. And he did this. This is really clever. The book's about mentorship. So he says, buy one copy. You bought one copy for yourself. Now get one copy for the person you want to mentor you and give it to them. And buy another copy for the person you want to mentor to pay it forward and give it to them too. So the first thing, every book sale is turning into 3 book sales, not just one. And then the upsell is, would you like to buy access to a conference around the Mentor to Million program? That requires admission. It's a virtual Zoom conference. And then at the end of that sneak peek, spoiler alert, they're selling a mentorship program. Buy coaching, buy a mentor, go through our specific program. So even though the book is going to has hit New York Times and has over 10,000 pre-orders on Amazon, and probably that number is probably outdated as of today, it's probably a lot more. He's not really making his money on the book sales. He's making his money on the conference and the mentorship. In order to do that, you've got to get those people on your in-house list, inside your house that you own. So one of the best ways to get people to do that, one of the simplest ways to set it up, is through an application, an app we use. It's called ManyChat. Sorry, my handwriting is not the best. ManyChat is designed, it's like $10 a month. It integrates directly with your Facebook fan page, which you should have. And then somebody can comment on a post and say, mentor me. And it will immediately send them a message back, a predetermined sequence like, hey, send your receipt to here. Hey, here's the link to pre-order your book. And it's an auto responder based on what they say. It replies and does automatic things that takes them through a series of steps designed to get them to do the next thing. And the beauty is it's Facebook, so it sucks their data out of Facebook and gives it to you so you can get their name, their email, their cell phone number. Because the money is in your list. The money is in your in-house list of email addresses that you can email whenever you want to offer more services. Or it's in your ManyChat list of anybody you can send a Facebook message to. Kevin can now send tens of thousands of Facebook Messenger messages in one push of one button. Hey, I'm going live right now. Or hey, I'm selling tickets to another event. Or hey, go buy X, Y, and Z. It's literally like profits on demand. He can, with a list, print money, and you can too. And of course, the goal is profits. We want the cash. And how we get people to get on your email list, how we get people to get on your ManyChat, how we get people to get on your house list, how we get people to pre-order is with advertising. Those Facebook ads that show up in your news feed that you click on that drive you somewhere. See, the trick is to realize Facebook is not a social network. They don't make a dime of their billions and billions of dollars in revenue off of you having friends on Facebook. Facebook is an advertising agency. They only make money if business owners like you and me pay for advertising to that user base, and those people click on those ads and go buy stuff. So Facebook is one of the largest advertising agencies on the planet. And the good news is, in the book space, it is relatively inexpensive to get people to respond to an ad. If you target the right people, remember the who and the where. Are they on Facebook in the first place? Where can we find them? Who do we want to find? Can we get those folks who are interested in spiritual and personal development? You bet. Who else do they follow on Facebook who's in spiritual and personal development? You can run an ad in front of anybody else's fans. So do you want people who are fans of Tony Robbins? Or do you want people who are fans of Deepak Chopra or Eckhart Tolle or Gabby Bernstein or any of the other, or the late great Dr. Wayne Dyer? Do we want people, who else do they follow? Whose books do they read that would lead us to believe they're a good customer for you? So before we go into the next part, I'm gonna do a quick poll. Got one more. If you would be so kind is to answer the question, how much money has your book made you so far? Under $1,000 US, 1,000 to 10,000, 10,000 to 100,000, or 100,000 or more? A few more seconds. Okay. Under $1,000 pretty much across the board. So we got to fix that. Now, Scott asked me to share with you a program about how we can fix all of these elements, the C, the A, the S, and the H for you. However, before we do that, I want to give you the chance to ask a couple questions and we can role play with you. Who is your target market for the book? Where can we find them? What type of offers can we make them? How can we take this to the next level so that you become a profitable author and you get the C, the A, the S, and the H down? So does anybody want to ask, who would like to ask a question? Type it in the chat box for me. It also gives me a second to take a breath. All right, I see people are typing. We'll give them a minute. Does this mean I need to be a mystery expert? No, I'm not saying you need to become a mystery expert. Just the fiction novel I gave, he wrote a novel about bullying and then became a bullying expert. That doesn't mean you need to become a true crimes investigator. We actually have a woman who was a retired English teacher who wrote a novel, a coming of age novel. And we then were working on getting her book into classrooms to be studied in English class. And then we sold study guides, workbooks, and a whole bunch of other things that went along with the book to help English teachers, because she, as an English teacher, knew exactly what type of discussion guides they used in the classroom. It was relatively easy for her to write one. So she wasn't becoming an expert at what was going on in the book. She was selling that book for analysis for English literature. Awesome question. Keep them coming. I understand upselling, but I don't think I can do that. I am 70 years old and don't have money to invest. So I'm probably not going to be able to do any of what you're suggesting. Okay. I totally understand that. It's not that you can't do it. Not having the money to market it is a whole separate question. You being 70 doesn't stop you from upselling anybody. We actually have a woman older than you who her book was about quilting and the story she learned in her sewing circle and how quilting brings people together. And she ended up selling other programs and that supplemented her retirement. So your age does not differentiate, does not discriminate against you at all. It actually might be in your favor. It's so funny. My wife was reading, my wife watches a number of the housewives or the reality shows on Bravo and E, and she brought home this lady's book and she read it and she was telling me about it. And I said, what is it? She's like, it's her memoirs. I'm like, wait a second, isn't she 26? How does she have memoirs yet? She doesn't have anything to remember. She's too young. Like I would never read someone, unless it was Mark Zuckerberg and it was the story of how he invented Facebook or something like that. I would never read someone's memoirs unless they went through some huge trauma. Most of the time, I'm not reading memoirs of someone who isn't a lot older than me. So don't let your age be your limiting belief as to why you can't do it. Money is a whole separate topic. Money is a legit reason why you think you can't do it, but you'd be surprised how little it takes if you're doing it yourself. Obviously, we're not cheap, and we'll talk about that. And I know Scott wants us to talk about that in a minute. In case there are some of you who do want us to do all the heavy lifting for you. Next question, how big is the author pool globally? In each niche, how do you determine how many competitors there are for your book? Okay, so it's not how big the author pool globally is, because you're not competing against every other author. So number one, we're not looking at what other authors you're competing with. I want to know how big your target market is. I want to define that. So is there an author pool for female chiropractic entrepreneurs? Probably not. There probably, if there are any books, I know there's the E-Myth chiropractor, but it's not aimed at women. If there are any books specifically for female chiropractors in this made up example, maybe there's 3, 4, 5 at the most. There aren't too many. You're not competing against the other authors. You're competing against the other people who offer services to those female chiropractic entrepreneurs. So we have Amazon Spy research software that does tell us how many books are in each niche, and we can also tell how many sales each book has. So I'll go find the first 5 best-selling books on a topic in that niche and see what they're selling every day, which is surprising because a lot of times to be number 1 or number 2, you don't have to sell that many books. I probably shouldn't share this, but we've literally had clients who had bestseller status in their category and sold less than 100 books in that day. It was just, there just wasn't that much competition. Now, if you're selling a book on finance and Tony Robbins launches Money Master the Game that day and sells 100,000 copies, you're toast. So we also plan, hey, what book launches do we know are coming to get the credibility factor? So Scott wanted me to share with you. This is the link to the page we set up specifically for you. It's marketdominationllc.com/author. On it, you will find the 4 services we offer authors. Number 1, the credibility piece is the relaunch your book if it's not on Amazon already. If it's on Amazon already, we republish it under our publishing imprint because we do own a publishing company specifically for this purpose. So you will then have been published by a real publisher. You won't be self-published anymore. And we relaunch that book and we market it to get it to be an Amazon category bestseller. And we do that for $1,000. If you already have the credibility and you're looking for the attention, we place 30-second ads, professionally produced, about your book and your message on our network of podcasts that get over 2 million downloads for only $300 a month. If you want to be interviewed, if you want a 30-minute commercial, if you want to be interviewed on other podcasts, excuse me. Sorry about that. If you want to be interviewed on a new show, on a different show every single week, and we'll create your podcast one sheet to get you booked. Our 2-time Emmy award-winning producer will coach you on how to be a great interview guest. We'll teach you our best practices. We'll teach you our pre-show follow-up process, our post-show follow-up process. And after the first month, after you've learned all that and we've done practice interviews with you, we'll book you on a show every single week for only $1,500 a month. Now, obviously, the back end has to be built out to be there. There's no point in doing this to just sell books. We have to help you build out the back end so you can actually make the real money in the other things that you offer after the book sale. And then if you wanted us to build out that ManyChat app, that lead generation funnel that gets people to pre-order or pre-purchase or register their purchase by giving you their contact information so that then you can automatically follow up with them and offer them other additional services, that's $497 a month, plus whatever ad budget we spend on Facebook to generate those leads for you. Excuse me. That is all at marketdominationllc.com/author. And due to our current manpower, we only have 4 slots available. It is first come, first serve. We are in the process of hiring new folks, but our current staff is almost maxed. So we're only offering 4 spots because I don't want you to hire and get someone totally new. I want you to get one of our existing account reps that's done this a whole bunch of times and is really, really good at it. I don't want you to be a guinea pig. That is all at marketdominationllc.com/author. And I'm going to take another breath and let you type in more questions, and then we'll wrap up. So again, remember, the 4 steps to becoming a profitable author: you got to have credibility. We've got to get people's attention. We've got to define who is our target market, where do they hang out. We've got to reach them. Our success comes not from just selling the book, but from what comes next, what comes after the book. And getting those folks on our internal house list so we can Facebook Messenger them, email them, send them promotions, send them advertising to generate the profits. And we need to run advertising in order to generate the names, the people to get on that list. Because if you have a Facebook fan page, you've probably discovered Facebook only shows your messaging, your posts, to like less than 1% of your audience. So I have 50,000 followers on my Facebook fan page, but on any given post, only 500 people actually see it because Facebook's an ad agency. And they'll let me get to the other 50,000 people if I write them a check. If I buy page post engagement ads from Facebook, they'll show it to my other 50,000. But the reason they don't show it to 99% of my people is because they want me to pay for access. They want me to pay to play. They want me to pay to do that. So in that case, I've got to write the check, punch in my credit card, and run ads to reach the rest of those people. My goal being to get them to take the next step and get on an email list or give me other contact information so I'm not dependent on Facebook every time I want to talk to them. Does that make sense? So that is the C, the A, the S, and the H. If you want us to do it for you, again, we've got 3 slots. Congratulations. We've got 3 slots left at marketdominationllc.com/author. We've already had one taken. Congratulations. We look forward to working with you. Super exciting. Scott, anything you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I think you covered it really well, Seth. And I know a few of the authors that you've worked with who have really had a lot of good success. I didn't know how easy it was to become an Amazon best-selling author. So,
well, you can become a best-selling author in your category, which Amazon counts. And according to their terms of service, I'll let you in on a little secret. If you achieve bestseller status for 24 hours, that counts. And you are allowed to use the bestseller seal. So you don't have to become a bestseller forever. Legally, to use the seal, you just have to do it for a day. So we have a process
for a day.
We have a process for pulling that off. We call it our Amazon bestseller in a day magic. So that you can say you're a bestseller, and then when we market the book going forward, it sells a lot more because everyone sees the bestseller seal and says, oh, this must be good. Differentiates you from the 2,500 other murder mysteries that launched that day.
Right. There's so many opportunities really for authors, aren't there?
There are. I mean, especially if you think about even just local press, public relations, PR. It seems to be in order to get on TV, in order to get interviewed on the news, which I've done many times, in order to get asked to write an article for Inc. or Forbes or any of that press, you are head and shoulders above everybody else if you have if you have a book.
Yep.
Because the word author is in the word authority. Authors are perceived as authorities and experts in today's market. Heinrich says, what is a realistic target for possible income from a book? I have 46 years of experience in IT and have written about the journey with some tips for people wanting to survive in the IT world. That's an awesome question. So I'm not allowed to make income claims on any interviews. Our authors won't let us, but you've got 46 years of experience in IT. You could write, you've written a book in the IT industry. I think that's huge potential. So what is realistic target for possible income? I don't know. I mean, how much do you want to make is the better question, because you can achieve almost any income goal if you plot out the 4 steps. And most importantly, that back end upsell offers. Do you want to make $10,000 a year? Do you want to make $100,000 a year? How much money do you want to make? And then we work backwards and say, based on that, how much do we need to do to achieve that? For example, we've got a client in the investing in real estate space. And there's an ebook, there's a physical book, there's a $997 course, and then there's upsells of coaching and masterminds and stuff that goes all the way up to $5, $10, $25, $100,000 a year. Think about that. You get one customer to pay them $100,000 a year, and they have quite a few that pay that. That's pretty awesome. And one of the lead magnets is this 3-year game plan. And it says, it's the process by filling out this worksheet and says, okay, these are our averages of these types of real estate deals across the country. How much money do you want to make? Divide by these number of deals. And then now we know how many leads you need, how many phone calls you have to make, how many appointments you have to do in order to generate that money. And if you follow our process for doing all of those things, and if you do this level of activity, this is exactly how much money you should make. So that's the kind of thing we want to help you figure out, is how much money do you want to make with this? And then what do we need to offer? If you want to make $10,000 a year, well, shoot, if we sell a $100 product, we got to sell a lot of them. If we sell a $1,000 product, we only got to sell 10. So it all depends on what your end goal is, to work backwards and figure out, what do I need, what types of things I need to do to achieve that. I mean, you could, if you had a $10 book, a book that made you $10 when you sold it, and you wanted to make $1 million, you got to sell 100,000 copies. But if our client has a $100,000 done for you real estate investing program, he's only got to sell 10 to make $1 million. Now, I know the idea of selling something for $100,000, that might be more than you make in a year, or it's more than my parents made working in a few years. So that idea might be too far-fetched, and you might say we're crazy, and I understand that, but you got to start somewhere. So if it's selling something for 100 as opposed to 10, if we can get you to sell something for 500 bucks or even 47, what comes after the book that they would logically buy that you can offer that will make you a heck of a lot more money than the book? I mean, take baby steps. That would be my answer to that, Heinrich. Great question. All right, well, if there aren't any others, we'll be done way sooner than I thought. I figured we scheduled 2 hours. I figured we'd be done in an hour and a half, but that's okay. You'll have plenty of extra. Oh, we got another question. I understand. You see how there's detectives with their own TV shows who only have 20 to 25 years of experience as detectives. People with my years of experience does not exist. So I will be in contact. Okay, awesome. Here, I'll type in my email, and you can shoot me an email. This doesn't apply to Heinrich, just Heinrich. Anyone can shoot me an email. Happy to answer. So you're absolutely right. So theoretically, 46 years in IT, that's an eternity in the internet world, right?
Yeah, that's a long time.
I mean, you've forgotten more than most IT people are ever going to know. I mean, IT 46 years ago, that was the 80s. That was, I had a TRS, whatever, computer. TI-99 or 4A was my first computer. I mean, maybe you were working on the ENIAC mainframe or the original IBM 360.
And if you were in business, your computer took up a whole floor.
You had punch cards.
And punch cards, yeah.
I started in 77 before the first PC was invented. Okay, so Heinrich, at the very least, even if you don't hire us, I want to interview you on my podcast because I bet you are a fascinating guest. And you got some crazy stories that would be awesome. See, there you go.
That's
All
right.
right.
And Free eBooks has a podcast too, a live stream every Thursday. And if you get a hold of me, Heinrich, we'll love to have you on the show too.
Look at that. We got you booked on 2 shows. You haven't even paid us anything yet. That
I'm
is
popping
awesome.
my email.
Yeah, please do. Awesome. Heinrich says thanks. He'll be in touch. Awesome. So go to marketdominationllc.com/author. Grab one of the remaining 3 slots. I would assume they'll be gone relatively in the next day or so, next 24 hours. Monique says, very grateful for this information. Thank you very much. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. We greatly appreciate your time. Scott, thanks so much for having me on. I look forward to doing future ones with you, teaching other things that the authors need to know. And I look forward to the next one.
Me too. Thanks for joining us, everybody. See you soon.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.